Morning everyone, today we're going to look at pilgrimage in Christianity. The specification says you need to know about where Christians can attend pilgrimage in Wales. The most common answer to that is St David's. St David was a Welsh bishop born at the start of the 6th century. He lived till about the age of 90. St David is important as it's said that he performed many miracles, but also that he had many miraculous events happen around him. One famous story remembers when St David was preaching to a council of bishops in Llandewi Brefi. St David was struggling to be heard over the noise of the bishops talking. He placed a handkerchief on the ground and miraculously the ground rose up beneath him so that the audience could see and hear him more clearly. One of the reasons St David is so important in the Christian faith is that he's believed to have founded several monasteries around Britain, Ireland and France. This includes the place where St David's Cathedral stands today. He became so important, in fact, that he was made a saint in 1120 and is recognised as the patron saint of Wales. One pilgrimage site associated with St David is St Non's Well. This is particularly popular in the Catholic Church. St David was born near Pembrokeshire to a woman called Non. The place where he was born is marked by the chapel of St Non. Unfortunately, St Non's chapel now lies in ruins. However, a stone in the corner of the chapel is said to be the exact stone on which David was born. In recent years, a new tradition has developed of placing pebbles from the nearby beach in front of this stone as a way of offering thanks to God for prayers that have been answered. Other customs include decorating the statue of St Non with rosary beads, money or flowers. There's a well close to the chapel that, according to legend, sprang up spontaneously when St David was born. The water from this well developed a reputation for having healing properties, and people would often throw stones or money in it for good luck or the hope that they might be healed. St Non's Chapel has been a popular site since the Middle Ages, when people used to walk across the country to get there. Today, Christians continue to visit the chapel to connect to their faith, but also to connect to their Welsh Christian heritage. Pilgrims often combine the visit to St Non's Chapel with visiting St David's Cathedral. This was built on the site of a monastery that was founded by St David himself. One previous pope, known as Pope Calactus II, declared St David's Cathedral to be a place of pilgrimage. He claimed that it was so important that 2 journeys to St David's were worth one to Jerusalem. Since 2012, there's also been a new pilgrimage centre that's opened known as Tir Pererin, which means Pilgrim's House. This offers education to young people, worship and prayer.
The building where we're sitting in at the moment is called Tir Pererin, and it's a place especially for pilgrims and visitors to feel at home, a place where they can have hospitality and rest from their journey, and a place where they can learn more about pilgrimage. So we remember lots of stories of St David, and one in particular that we tell to children very often is the story of David going to a meeting of church leaders, so bishops, and he was trying to speak to them, but they were all talking at the same time. And so he did a miracle, took out a handkerchief, put it down on the floor, and then he stood on the handkerchief, and then as he was speaking, the ground around him rose up and up, and then as he was speaking, a dove came down and landed on his shoulder. And we tell that to every group who comes to visit, so they can understand that David was speaking from God, and it was through him that lots of people came to understand about God in this place.
The work of Tir Pererin remembers what St David told Christians to do in his final sermon. He said, "Do the little things, the small things you've seen me doing." St David was known for being compassionate and helping those in need. The previous Archbishop Rowan Williams has also interpreted St David's final words. He says that it reminds us that the primary things for us are the relationships around us, the need to work at what's under our hands and what's within our reach. One of the main D questions you could get on pilgrimage would be whether or not all Christians should attend pilgrimage in order to express their faith. Now, many Christians might agree with the statement and argue that they should attend pilgrimage because they see it as a good way to meet together and develop their sense of community and faith. In Hebrews 10 it says, "And let us consider how we may spur one another on towards love and good deeds, not giving up meeting together." As such, by going on places of pilgrimage like St David's or the Holy Lands, they remember their history and heritage, and they can worship together as an expression of their identity. In addition, there's an argument to say that attending places of worship together as a group is a good way of not only meeting together and worshipping together, but also building a sense of God's presence. Jesus told his followers that when they meet together and share their faith, he'll be there with them. In Matthew 18, he said, "For where 2 or 3 of you gather in my name, there I am with them." As such, pilgrimage is a good way of experiencing God together as a community. Many Welsh Christians might argue that going to pilgrimage sites like St David's is not only a way of remembering their Christian faith, but also celebrating their Welsh Christian heritage and identity. For example, many Christians visit St David's and St Non's Chapel, as St David's was the patron saint of Wales. By visiting his birthplace and putting pebbles on his birthstone, they celebrate not only their Christian faith, but also remember their Welsh heritage. Finally then, many Christians would agree that all Christians should attend pilgrimage because it helps them develop Christian values. Many Christians feel it's beneficial to visit places like the Holy Land and Jerusalem to remember the life and suffering of Christ. They often visit the Way of Sorrow to remember his suffering, as Jesus talked about the fact that we will also suffer. He said, "If anyone wishes to come after me, he must deny himself and take up his cross and follow me." As such, pilgrimage is a good way of developing Christian values in our life today. On the other hand, many Christians would disagree and argue that as God is described as omnipresent or present everywhere, he can be worshipped anywhere. In Psalm 139 it says, "Where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence?" As such, you could argue that there's little need to go on a specific pilgrimage to somewhere like the Holy Land or St David, but actually we can worship God wherever and whenever we want to. More importantly, many evangelical Christians might argue that Christians have got a duty to spread the word of God, which means going to locations that aren't predominantly Christian. In Matthew, Jesus told his followers that they are the light of the world and they should shine before others. He also told his followers to go make disciples of the nations. As such, for many evangelical Christians, like those within the Salvation Army, there's more benefit going to places where people might not be Christian, like homeless shelters or prisons. Finally then, many Christians might argue that unlike other traditions like Islam, pilgrimage is not compulsory in Christianity, and there are less specific places to visit. Christians are ultimately free to express their faith however they want to, providing it's not selfish. In Galatians we're told, "You, my brothers and sisters, were called to be free, but do not use your freedom to indulge the flesh." Because of that, Christians can choose to reflect their faith however they want to, whether it's worship, clothing or jobs, not just pilgrimage. Again, I hope you found that useful. I would recommend that you test to see whether you actually understood any of that information. There are test questions on Quizlet or Kahoot, or you can have a go at the practice exam questions on the following slide. Good luck!